Hi, welcome to Punchline Talks, the business breakfast briefings. I'm Mark Owen, and each week I invite a panel of business and civic leaders to review the morning newspapers, find out what's happened in their own individual business and their own individual business sectors, and finally, what's caught their eye in this week's Punchline. Before I start, I'd like to thank our fantastic sponsors, Hazelwood's Business Accountants and Advisors, who are wonderful, nice people as well. And don't forget, if you like the show, please like, share, and subscribe. So let me introduce you to our wonderful panel. We have Morton Cullingmore, the MD of Cullingmore Group of Companies and the managing partner of Cullingmore Farms. He employs 100 staff, turnover 50 million, and he's also the chairman of the Road Haulage Association. We have Robert Miles, CEO of Immersa, a company based in Disney with 40 staff, turnover £10 million. And last week, they made the Sunday Times top 100 fastest growing companies and saw sales growth of 131% over the last 3 years. So congratulations to you, Robert, and welcome to the show as well. We have Glenn Collingbourne, Director of Hazelwood's Business and Accountants Advisors, and is a tax guru. He's also an ex-BBC Radio Gloucestershire pundit, like myself, going to be very shortly. And finally, never last but least, we've got Sam Holliday, ex-editor of the Bath Chronicle. He is the development manager for the Federation of Small Business, and this year he's celebrating 10 years in post. Thanks, everyone. Anyway, we've had some terrible tech problems today, so we're not going to see the newspapers, but it is unfortunately most of the papers lead with the tragic story of a little girl killed as the car plowed into an end-of-term school party. Absolutely tragic. Sam, let's start with you. What have you picked out from the papers too?
Well, every business watching this, of whatever size, will have some kind of social media policy. And for anyone watching that hasn't, I always say your rivals have, so get one. But it's getting a more and more confusing picture. And of course, yesterday we saw the launch of Threads, and it's just within 24 hours, 50 million people around the world apparently have downloaded this site, which is supposed to be a rival for Twitter. Now, rather than talk about Threads, I want to talk about Twitter itself. And there's a very good piece here in the Eye, and it says, "I know how important Twitter is. We can't let it die." And the one line that I liked about it, and it said, was that it is impossible to find something that could replicate it. Everyone is in one place: secretaries of state, journalists, actors, pressure groups, curious onlookers, board office workers. It is a communal talking place, Twitter. And I think the danger with having so many different social media is that people really won't know where to get. And we're all going to give each other less advice and support than we do now. So from the Federation of Small Business point of view, LinkedIn is still our main source of communication with one another. It's fantastic, but Twitter's still very important. It's quick, it's instant, it has lots of different connections. And I've downloaded Threads. I'm going to see what it's all about, but there'll be a point where a small business who knows they've got to have a social media strategy is just going to be completely bewildered. Where do you go? And the other side of the thing about the Threads, which makes me think, is that the reason Twitter is being challenged now is because Elon Musk has taken over Twitter and made a right mess of it all. And it's a little bit the problem that we've got now is you've got some incredibly wealthy people who've got too much time and too much money, and bad things happen. You could trace the awful tragedy that happened with Titanic to people with too much money. What can we do next? I know, let's get down to the Titanic. Richard Branson's spending all that money on a space race. You know, they're getting further and further away from what they know. Elon Musk made his money through electric cars, and he's done brilliantly with that. He's now gone onto Twitter and wrecked it. But for businesses that have got such an important part of their life as social media, it's a worrying situation. So I'm intrigued as to what's going to happen with Threads. I'm going to see how good it is and see whether I can recommend it to businesses to use. But I don't want to see Twitter disappear, because I think Twitter has been basically very good news. There's some awful stuff on there, but there's awful stuff everywhere, and you can avoid it if you try. But I think if Twitter went, then one of the main communication tools for all businesses and also individuals will go. So I think it's one of those things that is just really quite fascinating, but slightly worrying as well.
I totally agree with you. The other thing is we haven't got time. We haven't got time to do all those others. I haven't got time to be on Facebook, Instagram, Pinzip, Twitter, Instagram. You know, it's just too much. I'll just quickly ask the panel. Robert, will you have a Threads account?
No, I barely keep up with my Facebook.
Mm.
I'm not that far progressed from Friends Reunited, let alone what else comes. um, I have a 16-year-old daughter and a 25-year-old son, and he recently got married, and he posted everything on Instagram. So when he was on his honeymoon, saw nothing of it because I don't do Instagram. So it was quite a nice surprise for me seeing it all when it came back. But I struggle with a single Facebook, let alone combining them all into multiples.
Totally agree. Glenn, very quickly, will you set up a Twitter account?
Well, I would, if it did supersede Twitter, I'd set it up for the purposes of, I use Twitter as a news feed, and that's all. I don't use Facebook or anything like that. So if it was better, then I would take it, but I'm not in a rush.
Okay, Morton, what about yourself?
And personally, from my experience over the last few years, I think LinkedIn has taken over Twitter in terms of a business tool, and that's far more useful, and your connections and your conversations there are generally more positive. So I don't use Twitter a lot. I've got it, and yeah, there's stuff that goes on there with regards to the RHA and things, but I think LinkedIn is far superseded it as a platform.
Totally agree. It's one of the way that we like to get our news out there as well. Right. Okay. Thanks ever so much for that, Sam. Let's go over to you, Glenn. What have you picked out from the papers today?
Okay. Oh, interesting. We're talking about social media now. We're actually holding up paper copies, old-fashioned paper copies of things. So here I have, which was this? This is the Times. Actually, this is about innovation. So this is this headline here, which is that don't let the future of UK science vanish over Horizon. PM is told Horizon is actually an organisation for science throughout the European Union, which we were once part of, and as we left the EU, we withdrew from that. And what they're talking about now is actually trying to get back into that arrangement, because the idea was we were going to stand alone as warriors and do our own science. But 18 months, 2 years has gone by, and we haven't done anything at all. Science and science generally, I'm a big fan of blue sky thinking and that sort of thing. So that better cross-border collaboration, and also better access to billions of pounds of grants for institutions. So this is that. What have I got here? I've got the Guardian. Banks urged to increase savings rates at meetings with the regulator. So this is the issue, that while the base rate is going up by the Bank of England, savings rates aren't going up as rapidly as people who have to pay mortgages are. And consequently, the high street banks are getting a bit of a kicking because they aren't reflecting it. And I'm sure you will have seen that on any savings where you're getting 2.5%, even though the base rate's higher than that. And then finally, I've got here the Telegraph, which I picked because it was an actual broadsheet, which there aren't actually very many of nowadays. There's that. And so I thought I'd just bring in Lineker for a change, because he doesn't like the media, does he? Lineker backs Just Stop Oil at Wimbledon. So he's still out there being slightly controversial, which I kind of like, actually. And so what he's done is, after that, he's actually come out in support of the demonstration, saying, well, ultimately, they didn't really do any harm, did they? And they made us more aware of what's going on in the world.
If someone ran onto the middle of his Match the Day show, started throwing confetti around and put orange paint all over him, I think he'd have a different thing to say, to be honest with you. I think he just likes the limelight.
Yeah. Well, that's a job for you. That's a job for you at the weekend, then, Mark.
There we go. Thanks for that, Glenn. Okay, Morton, what have you picked out from us, please?
Well, as I'm becoming known on this show, picking out random things, I'm looking out over a former quarry at Lakeside, and a story that caught my eye actually late yesterday was about the beaver. Now I've got some relative experience in this. So in the Nene Valley, they are set to release beavers for the first time out in the wild, and it's all about they hoping it will bring nature conservation out there, and this charismatic animal. And look, they're cute, they're furry, they do beaver things, and they build dams. That's great, but we actually have experience in our quarry up here, which was in restoration, and there's a nature reserve next to us, and they've got I think 3 families of beaver on that nature reserve, and they escaped because they're good at escaping things because they got teeth. And they came across into our lakes and into our new plantation of about 5,000 trees, and they destroyed the place in 6 months. So it's kind of a word of warning for me. The beaver might look cool, and the principles might be cool to have them first time in the wild for 400 years, but while they might add to some sort of biodiversity, they can also wreak havoc. And it was literally like walking through a woodland of a cartoon show, because you literally see those pencil stumps everywhere where they have just decimated the place. And also, we're, in this country, especially in this area of the Cotswolds, we talk about flooding every year. And building dams in our waterways, our ditches, our rivers, and all those sorts of things. Is building dams going to help that? So it's a Friday word of warning about the beaver. They're beautiful, but what are we doing? Do we need them?
Well, as a journalist, and Sam would come with me, the headline of the day is beavers do what beavers do things, whatever it was. It was quite anyway, thanks ever so much for that. Robert, what have you picked out for us, please?
Well, I've gone with a bit of a fun one and a question around CCTV indirectly, and it's a piece out of the Daily Mail. It's called "That's Taking a Hard Line Here." This is a bus driver who is in Lambeth, who has parked his car at the start of his shift on a street, and come back to find it on a yellow line with a parking ticket. He pleads, "No, I never did that. Don't be so ridiculous. I didn't do it. There was no yellow lines." And you can imagine the council being very, very compassionate to that. So he does a bit of checking out and finds a CCTV camera on a local building. And it transpires that during his shift, they have been painting the lines. They've picked his car up, painted the line beneath it, and placed it back down facing the other way, at which point he's then been ticketed. So as I say, so had that CCTV not been there, the question is, would that parking ticket have remained, which is probably quite likely it would have. But I can imagine that. Imagine anyone going home saying, "Oh, I didn't park it on a yellow line. I didn't." But yeah, so I thought that was a bit of a fun one for a Friday.
I hope they sue the bloody arse of them.
But he's having to appeal the ticket still. So he's now submitted the CCTV and the case continues.
Well, fair play. He must have been one cheesed off bloody. That goes without saying. Have you got anything else, Robert? Another one as well?
Well, there's always, and taking my slightly renewable, my renewable thing, there's always something there which is lashing out at renewables with very little justification. It's just a small one, and a tycoon who is now resident offshore, because obviously he has been knighted, and he's saying, as is Sir Jim Ratcliffe saying that Britain will not cope with renewable energy. It's never going to be enough. We still need to frack and drill for oil and all the rest. And it's sometimes from a renewable energy perspective, you feel like you're banging your head against the wall. The fact that this still gets publicity and press time.
Okay, thanks ever so much for that. I've just got to pick out a few bits and pieces. It's got to be from the Daily Mail today. This has got to be Rock PJs. Robbie Williams and his, I think there was pajamas cost 355 quid. Looks pretty dapper in that. Also, another story that caught my eye was Bappy Days. There's a theme going on here. This is from the Sun newspaper. And this is where it says cheeseburgers are good for your health. Well, there you go. Who knew? But right.
Back to Five Guys we go.
Right, guys. Yes. Right, okay.
Depends where you get your beef from.
Yeah.
That's very true, Morn. We could have a plug in a minute, mate. Okay, Sam. Federation of Small Business, obviously, you find out what's going on in the county. You represent around 7,000, 8,000 businesses in the Southwest. What's the sort of feeling out there at the moment in business? So we get various surveys and they have mixed results. So
it's interesting, and I'm a bit interested to what everybody else says, because I find it, you speak to two businesses at the moment, you get two different opinions, because there was definitely a feel at the start of the year that we were coming through something, that confidence levels were certainly rising. We certainly did surveys that showed that. But last couple of weeks again, the interest rate things hit. That's definitely made people a bit nervous, because if you're thinking of investing in new machinery or something and you might need credit, you start looking at those figures and they seem quite scary. I saw a report in the Times this morning that energy prices, although they're going to go down a little bit, they're never going to get back to the sort of levels that we saw pre-COVID until 2030. It's a crazy report, but so if you're a small business and you're looking at all these factors, we still haven't really solved the issue with staffing. And I hear that this all the time, whether it's a very baseline job or a really top executive job, people are still struggling to get staff. So it's quite a mixed picture at the moment. Some businesses doing very well. Brilliant to see in the Sunday Times at the weekend about Roberts. I was really pleased to read that. Some businesses are doing really well, but there's a lot as well that aren't. And you only have to go through, as I did this morning, the business section of the Times, and Currys have got a profits warning. And I think I read in Punchline, I think it was Quiz Group has got a profit. And it's a bit of a mixed picture. And I think adding to that instability, what businesses hate is instability. We don't know what's going to be happening politically now, do we? And in my original hometown is a place called Tamworth in Staffordshire, and yesterday it looks like there's going to be a by-election there because of what the previous MP got up to. Now Tamworth was the last constituency in the old Conservative government to have a by-election. Labour won it and they went on to win it. It's one of those seats where whoever wins it wins the election. And I think we've got 4 or 5 by-elections coming up. We've got Rishi Sunak, looking a bit nervous at the moment. We've got interest rates high, and there's all this sort of adds to a certain sense of instability. So how are small businesses feeling? Well, Mark, I'll challenge you the same. Talk to 2 businesses this morning. I bet you'll get 2 different opinions. It's a very, very mixed picture. I don't think it's all going one way. Not as bad as it has been, don't get me wrong, but I'm a bit nervous myself to even predict what's going to happen because it just feels so uncertain at the moment.
One of the things I was at a food festival last week, and one of the things that came across time and time again, obviously the hospitality industry is really, really difficult. Again, there is business out there, but you've got to work extremely hard to get it. But we tend to do that anyway. Let's go over to you, Glenn, obviously, because you work at Hazelwoods, with the sort of tax sort of side of things as well. Has there been a rise of insolvencies? Has there been, what are you seeing as a business?
So we are seeing more insolvencies, but yeah, often this is still fallout and detritus from, I shouldn't say detritus, that's a bit of an insult for the businesses in question, but it's still a bit of a fallout from the pandemic, because what happened, before there was such a thing as the pandemic, we were still talking about problems in the retail sector, and we were still talking about problems in hospitality. And when the pandemic hit, a lot of those businesses were actually helped out and supported very well by the emergency sort of loans that came into place. So what we've seen is a new lease of life that helped those businesses struggle through a difficult period, while possibly more powerful or more solid businesses were also struggling. And what we're really seeing now is liquidations that are taking place for businesses that probably would have happened anyway. So I got that from we've got a team that do liquidations and insolvency, you see, and I took that from them. That's still really very much what they're seeing, in terms of local business and what's happening in the county. And then on my side of things, which is I'm a tax advisor, sort of first and foremost, which you mentioned earlier on, very kindly called me a guru. My book isn't out yet, but I tend to specialize in people who are, and I think you mentioned Jim Redcliffe there, people who are not living in the UK and might be overseas, so people who are non-domiciles, who are moving to the UK, moving away from the UK. So that's individuals. But what I'll also do, and I see a heck of a lot more of this now, is businesses that are looking to either recruit in other countries or move employees from one place to another, either over to here or over to another country, usually European Union country, but not always. And that's really, again, this is still a post-pandemic thing, because this is the rise of home working. So this is where your employee who's worked for you for 15 years is French, says, well, I don't really need to do this in Gloucestershire. Can't I just do this back at home where my family are? And they usually say, well, actually, yes, why not? So that's what definitely seeing a lot more global mobility.
And it's funny, isn't it? Because they're on about, are people going to go back to the office? And there's a story today where a government agency is saying, well, you've got to come back at least 2 days a week to the office, and I thought majority were 3. And when I go and deliver magazines all over the county, on a Monday and a Friday, the business parks and trading estates are completely empty. Actually, there's no point in us going there on those particular days, because we won't get to see the people and give the magazines out that we want to make sure they go out to. So you must see a lot of that as well then, Glenn.
Yeah, specifically at Hazelwoods, we've got we have 3 days in the office minimum. So you can do more days if you wish, but rather you didn't do less. So I agree with. I'm going to go into the office after this on a Friday. I suspect I'll be one of a few. So not too many there. It does make parking a lot easier. Not that it's a problem at Staverton where I work, but it does make parking for everybody a lot easier. And I'm sure everybody's noticed it if they're driving as well. It does make quite a lot of difference.
Okay, thanks so much. It was a very nice lead into obviously Morton, because being a farmer, there's no getting away from it. You can't work from home, mate, plowing the fields and getting all the beef out. Does it annoy you when everybody says, well, I want to work from home now? Well,
I think I've just had to get over it. But I mean, you know, in everything I do, be it trucks, be it quarries, be it farming, it's not a 3-day-a-week job. It's something you have to be, you know, you have to be there on site. You have to have a person in a truck. You have to have a person in a tractor. You know, those cows need to be fed at 6 o'clock in the morning and 7 p.m. at night. So otherwise it just doesn't happen. So, you know, the construction industry, the agriculture industry, it needs those people that want to work more than 35 hours a week. That's just how it is. And if that falls down, then we all miss a lot of things. If you don't have the truck driver, then you don't have the breakfast cereal in the supermarkets, etc. So there's no way around it. So I think, you know, as a society, we have to understand that, you know, not all jobs are able to be done through a laptop. So it's been interesting times, but you know, I think I'm seeing it come back around a little bit. That the world is starting to realize that not everything can be done that way, and there are still physical jobs out there. So, and I think if employment changes over the next 12 months, then people will have to bite the bullet and you know, and go back to the sort of physically present vocations.
Now, you're obviously famous for your beef as well. Do you just want to give it a quick plug, mate? Well,
Hey,
you can.
hey,
30 seconds.
Oh, 30 seconds. So look, I'm very proud to say that a few weeks ago we had our first full-blood Wagyu calf born at our farm. It's kind of the fruition of a 4-year project of mine to bring Wagyu to our farm in Stroud, and we've actually got a Wagyu cross Shorthorn, which is another rare breed product in a very well established, very well known butchery in Cirencester, and that's literally available this week. It's made a fantastic project. It is the best steak and burger you will have this weekend. So head into I don't know whether I'm allowed to plug another business, but
Jesse's.
Jesse Smith in Cirencester, and now they've got a place in Elkston as well, and a few other places. They're selling our beef. It's all aged, but you know, with a Wagyu, you get a little bit more marbling. It is the moistest, best steak you'll have. So yeah, go and buy some. But we're very proud and you know, developing the bloodlines here in Gloucestershire, which is great.
Oh, sounds fantastic. I mean, I could go to Jesse Smith's quite a lot. I should give it a go. Thanks ever so much for that, Morton. Robert, thanks ever so much for joining us today. Congratulations on being in the top 100 fastest growing companies. Did you hear about it a couple of weeks beforehand? How long did it sort of take for the news to filter through?
So they notified us a week before to say that we'd be listed in the top 100, and then we didn't actually know the ranking until they issued it on last Friday, where we actually landed 24th. So yeah, made up my MD/FD is really elated because he's been working very hard on that, and he said it was an accolade that he'd always wanted to be involved with. So to have been recognised took me aback somewhat. So
we should have used his picture then in the piece we wrote.
No, he's got a face for radio, I think they'd say. Do
you want to tell us about the business then?
Yeah, so it's renewable energy. I've been working in renewable energy for about 15 years, and thought right about 8 years ago, went right. I've been working for corporates in an industry that's so agile. You need to be a speedboat and not a super tanker. So I sort of took that leap back in 2015, incorporated in 2016. We did the hockey stick, and at some point with that going further and further below the line, you have to hold your nerve, and literally out of the back of the pandemic, actually, when everybody became more aware of their resilience and self-independence, and renewable energy sitting at the forefront, we just sort of started growing, and then the momentum finally paid off. And I think one of the big assistance in where we are now is actually the removal of government subsidies, because there was this what we call the solar coaster, where you have a subsidy drop and the business would grow and drop and grow and drop. But now it's self-sufficient without subsidies. You can make that long-term investment plan, and whether you are a commercial business, a private individual, there's a really it's not just about saving the environment now. There's a very solid financial case to do this as well. So yeah, delighted. It's talking about staffing there. We're in an industry that's very new, very emerging. We've got massive issues with apprenticeships. I've been working closely with, I'm actually a governor at the secondary school here in Dursey as well. I've been working as an employer engagement with Stroud, or SGS as they are now, college, looking at how we can start bringing these vocational courses into this industry, because right now kids can go and become a gas engineer, but we're phasing gas out in 4 years, but there's nothing within the renewable sector. So I think that's where we're going to have this gap in where we are, but massive opportunity.
I think there's something that we can definitely get on about and have a chat about another time, as you can imagine, because we just don't have time for that today, unfortunately. Thanks ever so much for all those bits and pieces. Well, we're coming to the end of the show already, would you believe? So just want to just ask you what stories you picked out from this week's Punch. So we'll start with you, Sam.
Well, as you may know, although it's rare in Gloucestershire, I think, in a rugby city, but I'm a massive football fan. So I was intrigued by the story about Forest Green taking on their first ever female football manager of a male team. Now we know that Dale and what they do at Forest Green is always sort of breaking the mold. You know, sometimes you do wonder, is it a publicity stunt? But I did chat to a Forest Green supporter, actually, somebody who works at Gloucester Council the other day, and he said that, you know, she's very good. She runs the academy. She understands the way that the club works, and why not? And I think anybody that wants to be serious about, you know, integration, inclusivity, has got to welcome this and cheer her on. And I just hope that football fans of the opposition, shall we say, are gentle with her. And I don't mean to be patronising about that, but I go to football, I go to rugby, I can see the difference. Football can be vicious. I'm sure she's made a tough stuff, and I wish her well. So congratulations, Forest Green, breaking the mould yet again.
It's funny you should mention it, because Dale Vince, he is a marketing.
Oh, genius!
He's a genius. Yeah, all the stuff, the green flag, and all the art, the air diamonds, sky diamonds, all the stuff he comes out with. And I can understand you say that as well. Is it a publicity stunt? Has she really got her own merit? I hope so. But it's funny enough, fantastic story, and congratulations to her. Let's go over to you, Glenn. Glenn, what have you picked out from this week's Punch?
Well, this is a great segue from Sam, because I picked this up because it's a development of an old Inland Revenue office, and as I said, tax is close to me, and that's Ecotricity are applying to develop the old Merry Walks Inland Revenue office, and I'm even saying Inland Revenue because I think it shut so long ago it was still called Inland Revenue at the time, as opposed to HM Revenue and Customs. And it just piqued my interest because it took me back to when I was much younger, starting out in this, and you actually had tax offices that you could actually go to if you had an issue, particularly people who aren't represented. There was Parabola Road in Cheltenham, Merry Walks in Stroud, then the place opposite the railway station in Gloucester, I forget what that was called, which is of course now turned into a massive development area. And they're applying for some residential and some office space there, which they're hoping to get through the Stroud Council. And there's some very pretty pictures, if you wish to look, of course, on your on the Punchline website as to what it might look like. But I did always wonder what happened to Merry Walks, actually, and the answer is absolutely nothing. So maybe they'll sort it out and make it a bit more attractive.
We don't forget the Merry Walks shopping centre is now Five Valley Shopping Centre. It's an amazing job. But it's quite funny you mentioned that story, because it took a while for us to get all the bits and pieces together. It's one of those stories that for Punchline that, you know, that we work 2 or 3, 4 days, sometimes even a week or two ahead of the scale. I'm thinking, God, when is that story going to come out as the editor? Thanks for that then, Glenn. Morton, what have you picked out for us, please?
Well, I will tread very carefully around this one, but it's been a few. You've tagged me in a few on your posts on LinkedIn, and that's really the overriding theme of construction and development in the county. You know, obviously there's been Robert Hitchens development that you've done an article on. You've also got one about the Cotswold Designer Outlet going ahead. Construction's needed in this county. Housing is needed in this county, and obviously I'm in the sort of construction industry. So I will send the subliminal message is that with all this construction, with the A417 missing link, you're going to need aggregates and sand and concrete. This county is woefully behind its allocation, and somebody in the decision makers in this county needs to have some joined up thinking that if we want CO2 footprints to reduce, we need it available locally, and we don't have that at the moment. So yeah, construction is a good thing. We want these things to go ahead sympathetically to the local environment, of course. But yeah, there's a lot to go on, and it's going to stimulate the local economy, and that's what we need and to create jobs in the future.
And watch this space for a story is all I can say on the back of that, Morton. Okay, thanks ever so much for that. Robert, what have you picked from this week's Punch?
Well, I mean, based on where we've come into the media this week, I think I would be missing a trick if I wasn't to pick up about the British Bank's declaration of the £200 million Southwest Investment Fund, which is really exciting. Just to give a background, the idea that it is to aim to help and support the growth and prosperity of small businesses across the Southwest, from Gloucestershire down to Cornwall. We are seeing, I think, right now, a real miss in our opportunity for innovation. We've got lots of areas that we can do things with. We've got very smart people, and if we really want to stand ourselves out in the international market, I think we need to look at that inward investment, and it would be great to see more small companies and businesses having that capital injection. I think the only area of caution I'd say is ensure that these people have got the ability to apply for it and the assistance to make those applications well, because they go from 25,000 up to 2 million, and equity investments up to 5 million. So it's a substantial money that can really make an impact to see some of our small business grow in the region. So I think great news.
Okay, thanks ever so much for that. I had sort of top stories that really caught my eye. It was going to be Hannah Digley. The other story was about the 710 new homes at Hunts Grove. A lot of houses being built all over the place, planning applications going in. But the real story for me has to be about BAE Systems. They are recruiting here in the area, going to take on another 40 jobs, massive investment. And of course, we are blessed, absolutely blessed with the avionics industry here. So many fantastic companies, and I'm hoping that if there is a downturn, there's one sector that is doing extremely well, and that's the defense sector. Anyway, that's all we've got time for now. If you like the show, please like, share, and subscribe. I'd like to thank my fantastic panel. A huge thanks to Hazelwood's business advisors and accountants. And if you like the show, please like, share, and subscribe. And we'll see you again next week. Thanks for joining Punchline Talks. Bye.